We are back with the Postsecondary Commissioner, Dr. Shannon Gilkey, and this week we are talking about college vaccinations and commencements, two of the biggest topics we've all been chatting about these past few months, few weeks. Dr. Gilkey, so let's talk about the situation with college vaccinations. We know that more and more are coming forward saying that these will be required. So how is your office working with the Department of Health to try to make this go as smoothly as possible? We know some students have questions about, how do I get one? Is this even possible to do, etc.?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Ashley, for the topic. In addition to education, keeping public health safety as a top priority for all of our institutions and certainly the state leadership in Rhode Island. Vaccination is another tool to keep our colleges safe. We spent a lot of time this last year, as the general public did, and businesses, cleaning and contact tracing and all those protocols that we have come to learn to ensure that we beat back the virus, that we can return to normal as soon as possible. Vaccinations is the next step in that tool and to employ it correctly. Right now, our office is working with the Rhode Island Department of Health and the governor's office to help the institutions set institution by institution policies on what vaccination will look like. We'll have some more information coming out later on this summer per institution. So I want to encourage folks to keep looking at the institution. There are also vaccination sites that are going to be available at CCRI and Rhode Island College for faculty, staff, and students, so you can get your vaccination. But I just want to encourage every Rhode Islander, whether you're one of our students or a potential student, to go out and get that vaccination. I got it as soon as I could, was eligible, so did my family, and we are certainly committed to making sure that all Rhode Islanders have access to a vaccination.
So some folks that right out the gate, we're saying, oh, I'm not going to get it. Some students may think they can fly under the radar by not getting it. Hopefully in a couple months, they'll see other students getting it, their friends, they'll understand that the vaccine is safe. What would be the consequence if they don't? It doesn't seem like they could just fly under the radar. It would impact their ability to, sign up for classes, correct?
Well, at this point right now, only 2 of our institutions are requiring in Rhode Island the vaccination. The other institutions are still working on setting their policy. But the thing about not getting the vaccination, and I understand vaccine hesitancy. I've talked to students about it and just community members just trying to understand it more as a citizen and an educator. But think about this. If you don't get the vaccination and you think you're too young to kind of fly under the radar, you may remain healthy. You could also endanger others by carrying the virus. So you really have to follow the science on getting the vaccinations. So I would encourage all Rhode Islanders to get it. You can get it free across the state. You can not even have to have an appointment at some locations. And so I would encourage, go to reopeningri.com, look at the FAQs about why it's important to get a vaccination, and then be encouraged to go get one.
So how is your office working with those, and the governor's office and the Department of Health working with those 2 schools currently to develop that plan? If you need to get the vaccine by X date, you need to get it along with the other 5 or 6 vaccinations you normally get.
Yeah, so our office is working with all the institutions, just like we have the last year, on contact tracing and safety protocols and mask wearing for faculty, staff, and students. And the institutions that have set those policies for requiring a vaccine, they have their guidelines and deadlines. And so we're collecting that information, and we're happy to publish it on our website so students can go to our website, but it'll certainly be on the reopeningri.com website as well for folks to access them. If you're a Brown student or a Johnson Wales or a CCRI student, pay close attention to your contacts at the institution, because it will vary per institution, but we're working with them to publish those as they come out.
Mm-hmm. And I had asked just basically, if you don't get it, there could be issues, right?
For the institutions that are requiring it,
the
process, absolutely. But as each institution sets their own policy, you're going to want to go to your institution and find out information there.
Mm-hmm. And where does Rhode Island stand when it comes to mandating vaccinations? I know we just have those 2 or 3, but I've seen some other states with, clearly much bigger states, but with a decent amount of colleges, of course, Massachusetts with all the public institutions.
Sure. Well, the Chronicle of Higher Education last week published that a little over 200 institutions in the United States are requiring the vaccine, institutions of higher education. There's over 4,000 institutions in the United States. So it's still a small number that's requiring it. So, but we're working, and institutions are still working through this. So I don't want to say that the picture has been fully painted yet. It's still, a lot of institutions are working on their policies over the summer in preparation for the fall course of, returning back to classes in person. Institutions in Rhode Island are trying to get back to in person as possible. Vaccinations is a tool to do that quickly. So they're working through that.
As it becomes more common, more available for younger people to get the vaccine, that more colleges would say, we're going to mandate it. It is so accessible and the use it's safe and all that.
Sure. Well, college leadership and faculty, they want to keep their campuses safe. They've been concerned with that for the last year. It's caused a lot of disruption to have, a thoughtful, productive education environment. So I think I would say that college leadership in general in Rhode Island and across the country are going to take measures to keep their faculty, their staff, and their students safe. And as we see the vaccination availability and rollout become more prevalent, that they're going to take measures to do that.
And the future of COVID testing on campuses. I know that there is still some widespread testing available. It's free for college students. But I know that URI is considering, and some other colleges considering, we might not be able to do it like that, but the testing still, of course, will be available in a medical office or so. What have you heard about testing being available in the fall?
Sure. Well, colleges are still going to be able to provide testing. There's institutions around the country that will, as vaccinations increase, the amount of testing may decrease because we have more folks that are vaccinated. I mean, that's the goal, is to return back to normal as much as possible before the pandemic hit. And the sooner we can get closer to herd immunity, the less contact tracing, the less testing that has to be, accomplished. So I think we have to closely watch that, but testing will continue to happen over time.
And I have a question from a student at New England Institute of Technology. He was saying he's vaccinated and it's getting to be difficult for him to go and get the required testing. I think it's once every 2 weeks because he works a full-time job. He goes to school at night. For one reason or another, he has some difficulty that they've had, tests have been lost. It's been canceled, he says. Where is that fine line where colleges can maybe ease up the required testing, but also keep students safe, this semester? How do you feel about required testing right now?
Sure. I would say that it's correlated with vaccination. Right now that we have to, the more that we get our faculty and staff and students vaccinated, the more we can, reduce the volume of testing. Right now, there still should be available tests, and I would encourage that student to go back to reopeningri.com or contact the institution if they're having some difficulty finding that test, because the college, the leadership of the universities that I'm in contact with on these are still very concerned about keeping their institutions safe, and so those resources should still be available.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's still fair to have that required testing every week or 2 weeks?
I'm sorry?
Do you think it's fair to still have that required testing every week or 2 weeks?
I think it's fair to still do testing until we have the critical mass of people vaccinated in Rhode Island.
And I know that critical mass of vaccinations is so important for anything that's happening this summer and spring, including commencements. I know some plans are in the works for some different colleges. So how is your office working with these different colleges to plan something safely? And could these commencements look significantly different than they did last year?
Sure, it's a great question, and commencement is a fantastic time to really celebrate the achievements of our students and the achievements of our families, because we know that education comes with a lot of family support. It's also time to celebrate our faculty, celebrate as well. And there's really two parts to it. There's the formal commencement ceremonies that traditionally have happened in masses and in person that will continue to happen in either a hybrid format or a virtual format, because in each institution will have their own commencement celebration protocol and policies and operations. We work directly with the institutions in the governor's office and the Rhode Island Department of Health with those individual college plans. They are trying to follow the guidelines that with mass gatherings. So they're going to take on different forms to do that. Some of them are going to do it department by department. Some are going to do it virtual, but it's going to have to follow the protocols by the state.
It does seem though that there are some in-person graduations that will be happening. I know CCRI, all the graduates turned the tassel. They just did their kind of walk up to the stage and then they were able to take photos outside. Some said, it was nice. It may not have had the pomp and circumstance like other years, but I think a lot of people, given the fact that they just went through college in a pandemic, I think a lot of them seem to be understanding about commencements. What's your message to folks who may not understand, why, my great aunt can't come to this one, I'm not getting 20 tickets.
Yeah, it's a tough time for families that have to experience that. And I completely understand wanting to be there with your family members and because we're all just so proud of our students, whether they're family members or just in our neighborhood or friends. To celebrate and really appreciate all the families' patience as we try to keep everyone safe. Hopefully we're able to tune in virtually to that community college graduation and celebrate virtually if you didn't get that ticket. And as more people get vaccinated and we get this critical mass of Rhode Islanders, we get to return back to all those mass gatherings again. That's what I'm excited about. I want to make sure our students get our support right now for their achievements. And my message to Rhode Islanders are to continue to help us with the protocols, get vaccinated so we can get this pandemic behind us and get back to these big celebrations like we're used to.
And just so I have an answer to some emails I get, some parents, some students will say, how come XYZ college is doing this, but we have to do that? Can you just explain the intricacies that go into planning a commencement and why, every college is different?
Sure. They're looking at the population of their students. They're looking at the types of venues and facilities. Again, we have to follow, each institution has to follow the guidelines set by our state as far as mass gatherings and testing protocols and cleaning protocols, things that have been tried over the last year and proven in many, many cases to keep people safe. And so depending on the facilities, depending on the number of graduates and how they can break that down, by department, by degree program. It's just a lot of variables. It makes a seemingly very simple task of graduation very complex to operationalize when you're trying to keep people safe. In a normal year, you think about the number of graduates that come in, it's a lot of logistics, but you add on that blanket of safety that has to be taken into account. So it just adds it to be a complex logistical operation.
This week, the vice president is coming here locally, and our former governor, Gina Raimondo, will be back in town. What are your thoughts on having, all eyes on Rhode Island? I know a big push is about infrastructure and whatnot, but I know that the education community was also very happy to have Dr. Jill Biden in the White House, a community college professor.
It's very exciting anytime you get the all eyes on Rhode Island, and we're really thankful that the vice president took time out and the first lady to come to really talk about workforce. And in my mind, when I think about workforce and the economy and what Rhode Island should be really proud of is our back to work Rhode Island and how that connects to education and training. For example, our Westerly Education Center was a part of that process of getting people back to work when they were dislocated. And as I think about the federal agenda and President Biden's agenda to get people into good paying jobs, education and training has a big role to play. And Rhode Island has a really good proof point through its Back to Work Rhode Island program to make that happen. So I'm excited that I hope they talk about that today. I'm going to be watching along as well, and hope we can focus on some of the good work that's happening in our state.
And I know we've talked about it in depth as well, but just anything this year specifically, how maybe the Westerly Education Center is stepping up, or just anything in general about how Rhode Island is, really putting the pedal to the metal.
Absolutely. Well, I think what we should watch for is how, there's the stimulus dollars going into our local municipalities across the state. I mean, that's a really good opportunity for communities to think about how they're going to invest those resources into education and training programs to get people into good paying jobs. And being that we're having all eyes on Rhode Island, I'd like to watch that as an educator and actually work with local leaders to think about how they do that community by community in Rhode Island.
And just to wrap up our interview, if you want to talk about just the top tasks right now of the RIOPC in different colleges. I know figuring out where stimulus money is going, of course, commencements, graduations, fall semester planning, what's going on?
Sure. Well, my message to students and families right now is congratulations on the achievements of this last year. We have graduations all throughout the year, but right now it's the big season for graduates. I also want to congratulate our K-12 students graduating high school. I hope that you're thinking about that transition if you don't already have plans to post-secondary education and training. It's also Teacher Week, National Teacher Week. So I want to thank all of our K-12 teachers for hanging in there this last year. I know it's been a tough year for all faculty, but particularly our K-12 teachers that they've tried to navigate a student's education. So that's top of mind for this week, but we're also keeping an eye on stimulus investments. I know that we're waiting for more guidance from the federal government. That I'll tell you from our office standpoint, return on investment, how do we invest stimulus dollars that set up Rhode Island to reopen the economy, to grow the economy where we want it to be in 5 or 10 years? That's our top priority when it comes to stimulus dollars. And we're working directly with the legislature and the governor's office to think about the best investments for these once in a generation investment for Rhode Island.
And just to confirm that the office is considering having some of that money go towards more financial aid, but of course waiting on federal guidelines.
Yeah, the federal legislation does direct a big portion of the stimulus dollars to focus on student aid, and that's very exciting for I know we talked about affordability last week, and when we try to get that price tag down, so students don't have to take out student loans, the stimulus dollars is going to be a big opportunity because a lot of it does go to student aid directly to students.
Great. I know it always comes back to affordability during these conversations. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Shannon Gilkey from the Rhode Island Office of the Postsecondary Commissioner. We'll be back next week with more higher ed topics.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.